ये बच्चे कुछ नहीं करेंगे। थोड़ा बताइए हुआ पति को मार दिया।
The Pahalgam terror attack was orchestrated, ordered by the Pakistani Army Chief, General Asim Munir, for his own personal interest.
What are you trying to say? Are you saying that there is a China hand in this attack or in this entire support to Pakistani terror infrastructure?
Pakistan is being equipped by China, of course, you know. Asim Munir could not have done it without explicit approval or a nod at least from the dragon, from the red dragon. Of General Asim Munir, he wants to become the next Zia-ul-Haq and he wants to keep Imran Khan in jail.
Joining me is the man who has been questioning the Pakistani establishment on what they've been doing with his country, with his former country. A former military officer turned investigative journalist, Major Adil Raja. He was a military officer in the Pakistani army and now lives almost in exile in London. We'll ask him how that came about, but we're also being joined by Tony Gosling, who is an investigative journalist, a senior journalist from London. He was formerly with the BBC as well. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us here. We are talking about the Pahalgam terror attack, counter-terror ops, India's retaliation and response. But first, Adil Raja, coming to you. Are there telltale signs of Pakistani establishment's involvement in this attack or not?
Well, Geeta, thank you for asking this question, and it's been quite a controversy. But I, as an investigative journalist, maintain a number of sources in the Pakistani military and in the Pakistani intelligence community, which believes that Pakistan requires the rule of law and Pakistan requires democracy. The true democracy. We have never had that. We now realize it. And any sensible man who realizes it, he does provide me with information. And since I have served for 21 years in the Pakistani military as a third generation Pakistani military officer, and nobody can doubt my patriotism. I've been offered like interviews by dozens of Indian channels, but I only chose to come on your channel and with Tony, of course. And I would stand by my information, which has been provided to me by my sources in the Pakistani intelligence community, who claim that the Pahalgam terror attack was orchestrated, ordered by the Pakistani Army Chief, General Asim Munir, for his own personal interest. That is what I still say the same thing. But there are many other factors behind it. What are his personal interests? Those needs to be addressed. And then, there is a philosophy behind it that needs to be discussed in detail. But yes, I stand by my information that it was a personal venture, irrespective of the ISI officers telling General Asim Munir not to go ahead with it because of the repercussions. He still went ahead with it after, following the very old philosophy, I would say, which our army officers love, talking about a philosophy of 1,000 cuts, and it has been replied by Dr. Amarjit Singh in 2014 by Indian Defense General, but well, we will discuss it if you'll allow me later. But yes, it was a personal venture of General Asim Munir. Yeah.
Well, is it, and I'll come to Tony because this must have come as a shock to Tony when he was interviewing you earlier, Adil, and the fact is that there is no quid pro quo here. Here is a man who is served in the Pakistani military and is speaking truth to power, sitting in London questioning what is it that the Pakistani army is doing. Is the playbook similar, Adil, to what we saw in the past? When we see army chiefs due to retire or if their extensions are coming up And that's when you see acts of desperation where the Pakistani army does things where the country then has to rally behind this one army chief. Is that one of the cases over here as well, where Asim Munir, due to retire or due an extension, is or acted in desperation?
Well, Geeta, this is a unanimous, this is a unanimous decision right now. This is a unanimous opinion of the entire Pakistan, and the entire country of in between 200 or 250 million people, less few who are on the payroll of the military or the intelligence operation, information operations, or who are part of the ruling party's media cell, that the Pakistani military has been ruling the country in one way or the other. I mean, you cannot, debate this. It is our history, right? And right now, for last 3 years, ever since the regime change operation against Imran Khan was allegedly carried out, and it was definitely talked about in the US, and Imran Khan blamed the US, and well, there was this cipher from the US Assistant Secretary of State, Donald Liu, which did come forward, because of which Imran Khan is facing so many cases of treason as well. But that cipher is there. That's a proof that it was a regime change operation which was initiated by the Pakistani military and they sought the approval of the Americans, and it's part of the history now. So ever since that regime change operation, the Pakistani military's reputation got challenged for the first time in our history. I mean, we lost half the country, and that's me, the third generation Pakistan Army officer, saying this, whose grandfather, Colonel Akbar Khan, was a prisoner of war in India for 4 years, and he was commanding 12th FF Regiment in East Pakistan. And he was such a heartbroken man after he came back from India that he left the army, migrated to Canada because he just couldn't take it anymore. But even then, the Pakistani people forgot and forgave this army, and they again came back into power with Zia-ul-Haq ruling for another 11 years, and General Musharraf ruling for another 11. And now General Asim Munir wants to follow through, and he wants to rule not for 5, not for 6, but for another 10 to 11 years. There are no two opinions. There is no doubt about it. But for doing that, you need public support, and he does not have the public support in Pakistan. The public support is for Imran Khan, for whom the people of Pakistan voted on the February 8, 2024 elections. And it's all well documented. I'm not just, making it all up. It's very well documented. So he did not have the public support. That was his problem. Then there is the Balochistan issue. All right, you do need to realize that there is a massive Balochistan issue, and the Pakistani military is not in control of Balochistan and in the blame game. And there is Kalboshan Jadev there as well, who's firing smoking gun with Pakistanis have. And under General Bajwa, the previous army chief who opened the Kartarpur corridor, it was a different policy. Now the policy, and of course, Pakistan Army's reputation and public image is so downtrodden that they needed a revival of their public image. So Balochistan became a very convenient excuse in-house to tell the officers that, see, they are, hitting us in Balochistan, we're gonna hit them in Kashmir, right? But in actual, the real reason was always the extension of General Asim Munir. He wants to become the next Zia-ul-Haq, and he wants to keep Imran Khan in jail. There is no doubt in any Pakistani's mind who's got a balanced head over his or her shoulders. But Geeta, why don't you guys address the elephant in the room? Asim Munir could not have done it without explicit approval or a nod, at least, from the dragon, from the red dragon, and you guys don't want to talk about
the friend, all-weather friend. We will talk about that, Adil. Keep that thought, because I'll just come back to you. Let's just go to Tony. Tony, you interviewed Adil Raja, and it must have been baffling to see the kind of information Adil Raja had to really divulge. In all this, where does the West really come?
I wasn't shocked. I was not shocked at all. Shocked is a word I don't think really honest journalists will use these days, because so much is really changing in the world, and also
Absolutely.
the extent to which the norms are being broken doesn't shock me. But I can tell you, I mean, I lived in Northern Ireland over here in the Troubles, and I'm very critical of our King Charles. I think he's taking a medieval style autocratic role in Britain, and I think it's so important that the press, the media, is able to challenge the ruling elite in its own country. But I'm not shocked, because it's very well known here that you have the main people controlling these terrorist groups. These terrorist groups could not survive on their own. I found it interesting to see that these guys have disappeared completely, like in a twinkle of an eye. Where have they gone? Well, they obviously have what the Russians call a roof. That is to say, someone helping them, someone protecting them. They couldn't just go and hide in a cave. Or try, change their uniforms, disappear into a village. They've obviously got intelligence service help. And the problem here is that we don't have democracy in Pakistan. If Imran Khan was back, this decision could never have been made if indeed it was the Pakistani military that decided to do this. Here in Britain, when the civil war kicked off in Ireland, do you know who started it? Well, it was actually the Defence Secretary, Lord Carrington, allowed the army to shoot into unarmed demonstrators Bloody Sunday in 1972 in Northern Ireland. And that's kicked things off, and it started 25 years of civil war. So I think we always should be first looking at elements within our own establishments, particularly the security establishment and the permanent government, the civil service, the people that we don't elect, as the potential culprits here. Because in these geopolitical games being played nowadays, often, and it's obvious with Imran Khan, the way he's been kicked out, the democratic Prime Minister of Pakistan, that there are other games being played by very powerful forces, the intelligence services and big business, the big financial empires of the world.
Right, Tony, that's where I'd question you on West's role. But hold that thought. I'll come back to you. What has the West done? How did the West really support Pakistan to their benefit, to their interest, to their advantage, turning a blind eye to this military dictatorship that we've seen through decades in Pakistan? Adil Raja, the modus operandi this time around has been very different. These terrorists have not been caught. It's been 9 days. They're almost on their way back. They in all probability could have crossed over as well. We do not really know. What's the play over here? What's the modus operandi this time around? Are we looking at very well-trained, supported terrorists rather than those who were sent as just fidains in the past?
So you see, Geeta, you cannot simply, oversimplify this entire issue, and you just cannot, rub it off by saying it's an India-Pakistan standoff and it has been always happening like this. It is not that simple, mind you. Definitely, the General Asim Munir's personal interest of ruling the country for another 10 years, that is there. All right. But Pakistan is being equipped by China, of course, You're blaming the West, fine. All right. They have stayed silent on the regime change operation, facilitated it, rather, the Biden administration facilitated it. And well, later on, even we've seen even in the UK, they kept quiet about it. They gave a guard of honor to General Asim Munir once he was here. And you've seen the result of it, that the Pakistani army and air attaché, Colonel Taimur, the kind of signals he was making the other day at the Pakistani High Commission. I'm not going to replicate those. I'm not going to, make those signals over here, but the kind of signals he was making.
Calls for death to the protesters outside the Pakistan High Commission in London.
So those are the signals which the kids in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they used to make, and they still make. Now, when in this war within, the Pakistani military goes to their area because they suffered so much in this war within, started by our generals, not supported by our people. We've been suffering because of our generals' policies. General Zia-ul-Haq brought in the Cold War, and we got the heroin culture, the Kalashnikov culture. Of course, we were supporting, and all this terrorism in Pakistan and different terrorist groups, they were formed as international ideological mercenaries or the Mujahideen with the cooperation of the CIA and ISI. This is history. I'm not making it up. It's all part
and
of the history.
MI6. And MI6, by the way, the British intelligence.
Yeah. So you can't really you cannot give a free chit you cannot give a clean chit to the West. West is definitely involved. But this situation over here is when Representative Joe Wilson is bringing the Pakistan Democracy Act in the US, which calls for the Magnitsky style sanctions on General Asim Munir and his associates. He's tried everything, but the Pakistani diaspora in the USA, they have successfully lobbied against him, so he's not finding a headway. He offered the critical minerals to the Americans, brought them in, but the Chinese are so well entrenched in Pakistan that the Americans cannot compete them in the market of critical minerals. So ultimately, the Americans took a back step there. So the Chinese came in and they must have, I mean, this is my analysis now, that they must have, this is the elephant in the room. Of course, I understand India doesn't want to open another front. Chinese have got the kind of superiority, air superiority or military superiority, which India does not want to acknowledge, but it is there. It doesn't mean if you don't want to acknowledge it, it's not there. It is there. At the same time, India is such a big export market for China that they're never ever going to come at you and they're never going to open a war front with you.
What are you trying to say, Adil? What are you trying to say? Are you saying that there is a China hand in this attack or in this entire support to Pakistani terror infrastructure that benefits China to the detriment of India?
Well, you see, Geeta, Pakistan's foreign secretary, very well-respected former foreign secretary Shamshad Ahmad Khan was given an interview 3 days ago to Sorab Barkat of Siyasat.pk, and he said something which really I quoted in my latest article on my X profile at Soldier Speaks as well, that the Chinese never fight themselves. They make you fight, all right? They don't want to, they never involve themselves. They, use proxies and there's a pattern here. Starting from Myanmar, then Sri Lanka, then Bangladesh, and mind you, the Pakistan DGISI, the former DGISI, General Nadeem Anjum, has been telling Indian businessmen who came to Nawaz Sharif's wedding anniversary. It was a recent wedding anniversary of one of his grandchildren, and he was there, invited there as well, and he's been telling the Indian guest, and you can confirm it with them, that we, the ISI, have been working with the Chinese state intelligence, the MSS, for the regime change in Bangladesh. Well, you see, so there is a pattern. Pakistan is lost, a last link in this pattern. That now, with Pakistan, India is encircled from all four sides, and there is a great power rivalry going on between America and China. And Chinese don't want to fight themselves. They want to maintain their markets. What do the American wants in this trade war? They want to shift the industrial base to India. Obviously, that's what's going on right now. Even Apple has announced moving their factories to India. So what would China do? China has established an industrial base, a modern industrial base, and they have become the factory of the world. And they've invested 30 years of time and money into that. Do you think they're just going to let it go? They're going to let you engage with Pakistan, and this thing will escalate. I'm telling you, this is not going to just go away. General Asim Munir has been saying it all along, once he was a major in the staff course and up till he was doing the war course in Islamabad, and now as an army chief, he has been constantly talking about...
He was DGISI when Pulwama happened.
Yeah, he was DGISI when Pulwama happened, of course. So he's been saying that we'll let India bleed by 1,000 cuts. And it was addressed by the Indian military analyst, Dr. Amarjit Singh, writing in Indian Defense Review. He said, whatever others may believe, my opinion is simply that it's better for India to bear a costly nuclear attack by Pakistan and get it over with, even at the cost of tens of millions of deaths, than suffer ignominy and pain day in and day out through 1,000 cuts. And, they wasted energy in unrealized potential. That's what you think. Fine. But you see, India and Pakistan can agree only on one thing. Neither wants the other one around. and which is not a very healthy aspiration, because we are talking about 1.3 billion Indians, and we're talking around 250 million Pakistanis, and it is going to have a nuclear war is going to have a global impact that is there. But right now, at this particular time and moment, the great power rivalry is being played in South Asia. If India stays engaged with Pakistan, right? And Pakistan is, they kept on getting their ammunition supply, and they kept on getting their $1 or $2 billion loan rollovers, and right, that's how we are running our economy. So that means that India would stay engaged. India will spend all their available resources on their defense purchase. They won't be able to concentrate on industrial development. So that makes perfect sense as per the Chinese doctrine. There's no conspiracy here. It's realpolitik.
Okay. Khwaja Asif, the defense minister, admitting that they have done the dirty work for the West, particularly the United States of America, is an admission, Tony Gosling, that Pakistan has, for more than 3 decades, supported, abetted and funded terrorism and terrorists.
Yeah, well, this is not lost on me, I can tell you, because I've been looking for many years into the backstories of the September the 11th attacks. We had, in 2005, 54 people killed in London, and the 7/7 London bombings. And so you have to look into who is really behind this. This was not, in London, for example, this was not just 4 guys who happened to come down from Leeds, who happened to be Muslims. This was an orchestrated attack. In fact, if you look, you'll see security service agents involved in these attacks. If you look carefully, you'll see even ex-special forces from the British Army. Actually, it was the Special Boat Service that actually trained these guys up in Leeds. And so I think we've always got to be very careful jumping to conclusions. I mean, 24-hour rolling news journalism, we are tempted, aren't we, to try and draw conclusions as soon as possible. And do you know what? The security services know that. And so they like to feed a kind of little line of clues so that the mainstream journalists around the world will just jump onto those clues and come to a very fast conclusion. But very often, these sorts of terrorist attacks are carried out simply by the big intelligence services, the big intelligence agencies, and they laugh at us as we follow what they want us to think is happening. That's why, we need to have much better incisive journalism that takes a longer time to come to a proper conclusion. And the main reason I think they're doing it is simply this old tactic the British used to use in the British Empire, when the Royal Navy would turn up at your port and start firing cannons at you until you did what the Royal Navy said, which is a divide and rule tactic. And you have to look at Kashmir. This is a terrible, it's like an open wound left by the British when the British left India and Pakistan. And the only way to really sort something like that out, because it's used for geopolitical purposes, is to have some kind of very simple, basic referendum. Let the people decide. What do they want to do? They might even want to have their own independent country. Now, I know that's not popular with India or Pakistan, but we've got to sort out these open wounds. Obviously, there are similar things left in the Middle East by the British, and that is the essential problem. Do not allow these divide and rule tactics to dictate your policy, and never jump to conclusions about who's behind a terrorist attack.
Right, Adil, if I could come to you, the issue of terrorism, the likes of Hafiz Saeed and Masood Azhar, and the kind of support they get from Pakistani establishment and military, why and how does the Pakistani military use them?
You see, Geeta, there's a history to this entire problem, and we've already discussed it in this program, that it's all started with the Cold War era, when the CIA sponsored and the ISI and the CIA jihad was being conducted against the USSR, which was a successful jihad, we would say. But the Pakistanis got heroin and Kalashnikov culture, but that was not the only thing the Pakistanis got. Pakistani got tens of thousands of international ideological mercenaries ministries who went out of job because the Americans decided to pack up their bag and leave, and with their dollars as well. So they have to earn as well, and they had to be paid as well. So that is where they were recruited at proxies, and that is where the various militant factions and militant organizations, they grew up, and they later on became a part of ISIS. That is how, as I was talking about in this program about Shamshad Ahmad Khan, the former foreign secretary of Pakistan, Shamshad Ahmad Khan, in his interviews 3 days ago at siyasat.pk, was saying that the Pakistanis knew where Osama bin Laden was. And then, they sheltered him, knowing fully well, and that they are with us. And then they made some sort of an arrangement as well. And that's him saying it, and that he was the foreign secretary of Pakistan at that time. So the policy of harboring these militant outfits were an offshoot of the Cold War era. And now talking specifically about Masood Azhar, who was as per my investigation, was in Afghanistan, not there anymore, now in Pakistan somewhere after he suffered the heart attack. That is open in the open source. Talking about Hafiz Saeed, he was supposed to be in Court Lakhpat jail, but he hardly lives there. He roams around freely, and that is very interesting because he was living in Lahore in his house. In his own house, and he's got prison guards with him who escort him. That is there. But the interesting thing over here is the Indians have been freely targeting militant leadership in Pakistan in the past couple of years, relating to the Kashmiri separatist group and the Khalistani separatist group as well. So that that is something which where I have the right to ask this question: that how come the Indians didn't know that what's going on in Kashmir? It was a serious security lapse, and they had that kind of access to hit this militant leadership in Pakistan, and there was a failed attempt on Hafiz Saeed. You know that, right? So there is a history to it. This is the Pakistan's historical baggage left over by the Americans, and that is where Khaja Asif, the defense minister's statements come in, which sounded very callous, but he said that, well, we've been doing the dirty work for the West, and he blamed the US and the West and the UK. That's what actually he was trying to say, There is a background to this entire issue, and these international ideological mercenaries were launched in Kashmir as well, definitely. But General Musharraf took a U-turn on this policy in 2002 and 2006, and the Indian diplomatic pressure through the US. So these guys went out of job, they went back, and they formed their own factions, and they've got a lot of money starting because they've got a history of starting in the 1980s up till now. They've got assets, they've got a history of connections with the ISI, with the CIA. How can you just abandon them? They know your secrets,
Well, Adil, there's a very interesting book by Hussain Haqqani. Ambassador Haqqani wrote a book on Pakistan between mosque and military. And if you look at that, there surely is a playbook over here with Asim Munir looking at radical clerics and seeking support from them to become what you said, Zia-ul-Haq of Pakistan today.
Well, Geeta, that's what I've been saying all along, and that's why I am facing libel litigation here in the UK by the ISI itself in the Royal Court of Justice, because I've been exposing these machinations of Asim Munir, who wants to become Zia-ul-Haq 2.0, using the military and religious fundamentalist machinery as it was used during the tenure of Zia-ul-Haq to extend his tenure for another, extend his tenure to 5 years. He's going to complete his 3 years term in this November. So he wants it to go for another 2 years, and then he wants an extension for another 5 years. So he wants to become the super king, the Khalifa, and that suits him well once the Chinese wants him to engage the Indians. And he can do whatever he wants to do in Pakistan because the Chinese believe in the policy of non-interference. So definitely that's what Asim Munir is planning. He is using all this religious fundamentalist organizations for his personal benefit because he does not want democracy to come back. He does not want Imran Khan to come back from jail who the people is voted for. So definitely that is at play, you know, and the Indians have been watching him silently, thinking that once your enemy is making a mistake, do not, you know, tell him to stop. And since he is destroying the country in-house, he's destroying all the institutions, so don't stop him, let him do what he's doing. But well, what he's doing is coming to bite you as well, and he's not going to stop at this. He's going to escalate the situation, because till the time he'll keep on escalating it, well, he'll keep getting the support which he's getting right now to extend his rule. Like, do you remember that famous movie in Sholay in which Gabbar Singh said to Basanti, "Naach Basanti, jab tak tu nachegi, us waqt tak jo hai inki सांसें चलेंगी." So till the time Asim Munir will keep engaging India, he'll keep getting the support from Beijing. It's as simple as that. What can't you understand?
Well, thank you so much for joining us. That's an exclusive conversation with Adil Raja and Tony Gosling. You can catch the entire interview also online on India Today and India Today Global. Thank you.